we're going to talk about tennis elbow. We're going to talk about how your equipment can help you with tennis elbow or at the same time hurt you with it. But I'm going to break it down to racket, string, and also injury prevention with tennis elbow, because right now I think the last statistic was 67 or 68% of club players will get tennis elbow. So we're trying to figure out a way where you can prevent that from happening. And if you have it now, how we can kind of reduce the pain or try to even stop it completely. So frame-wise and racket-wise, the whole idea is you want the racket to work for you and not the other way around. What we see a lot of times is people just pick up a racket and say, this feels good, I'll figure out how to use this racket. But it's like the worst way you can do it, because it will change your game. You know, there's a reason why you take lessons and you take proper strokes. You know, you want the racket to do the work with your proper strokes out there. Some of the basic things you want to look for with a racket is head size, weight, balance, stiffness. There's a lot of statistics to it, and I'm going to show you some of the varying examples here. When you look at a racket, you want to also look at power, how much power is being generated with your racket there. When you see the guys on tour, they generate their own power. They want a racket that kind of gives them more control, a little better feel on their shots, and they go extremely heavy. One example I'll show you here is going to be Federer's racket. It's extremely heavy. I'll have you guys carry it and pick it up and see. What the pros really like is an extremely small head. This is 90 square inches in the head here. Extremely thin beam. The weight of it is over 12 ounces. It's about 12.7 ounces with the strings installed. And it's extremely head light. All the weight is in the handle here. So one thing I want you to feel is you'll immediately hold on to it and say, man, this thing is like a brick. But if you actually flip it over and hold it this way, you'll feel all the weight being at the tip right there. So hold this, see how it feels, try it and hit with it, have fun with it, because it is extremely hard to play with this one. I mean, literally the sweet spot on this racket is almost like a pin. The other extreme, and you guys can compare it as well. We talk about Roger Federer's head size is 90 square inches. This is one of our bigger ones. This is 122 square inches. Extremely large. Actually, the largest legal size you can get is, I believe, 137 now. But it's too big. It's way too big here. The great thing about this racket, and you'll see the thickness is going to be almost 2.5 times the thickness of Federer's racket there. Very lightweight, under 9 ounces, and extremely head heavy, which is the opposite way of what you want to look at what we call a player's racket. When you hold onto it, you'll feel all the weight in the head. Same thing. Flip it around, it feels like it's hollow in the grip here. The great thing about these rackets, extremely playable. You get a lot of power behind the ball, and easy to play with. Big surface area, so when you're replaying, virtually the whole head feels like a sweet spot sometimes. The downside to it, if you generate your own power and your racket generates power, typically you'll be hitting it long. So sometimes people look at this and say, oh, this is the most powerful racket, and it is one of the pricier rackets as well. They say, oh, if it's that pricey, it's got to be good. But you'll never see any of the pros using it because they need a racket where they can swing out completely on their ball. The positives and negatives to weight, if it's lighter racket, very maneuverable, easy to play with. Sometimes you don't have to have such a good preparation to hit a ball. You can really scoop up a ball very quickly. The downside to it is that you actually get less power with a lighter racket. With all things being equal, you get less power, and you do get a little bit more vibration into your arm. And that's been the biggest issue that nowadays people are running into, because everybody thinks light, and all of a sudden tennis elbow comes in, wrist issues comes in, shoulder issues come in. That's where the problem does come in with a racket that may be too light for you. What we always tell people is you want to go with the heaviest racket that you can possibly handle, meaning that what I can handle is different from what my mom can handle, from Herbert, from anybody. Everybody has their certain threshold. So we always say try to go with heavier rackets, try to go with lighter ones, and see what that perfect weight is for you. Because you also want to mix playability and also injury prevention at the same time. Heavier rackets, like I said, you do get more power with it. It is slower to accelerate, so it will take some time to come around. That's why people like a lighter racket, because you feel better with a lighter racket, because you're thinking, man, I can hit any ball whenever I want. I can be a little bit more lazy and not have to move my feet or prepare for the ball for a lot of these shots. So, and the other downside, if it is too heavy, like I said, there is a threshold and there is a limit. You know, if it is too heavy and you don't have a full swing, you know, if you stop your stroke, you are going to feel in your arm. You'll put a lot of strain on your wrist. That's why you do have to have a proper technique with heavier rackets. You can have shoulder issues at the same time with it too. So stiffness, we'll go through these fairly quickly. Stiffness, the stiffer it is, more power. Downside again, more shock though. Something's got to give and absorb that shot. And if it's not going to be the strings, it's not going to be the frame, it's going to be your wrist, forearm, and shoulder. So you got to find that happy medium there. How do you know when it's time to get your racket restrung? Or what's the cardinal rule? The cardinal rule is you want to see how many times you play in a week, and that's how many times you should get it strung within a year. And it sounds like a lot, but what it is if you play 5 days a week, you should get it strung almost every other month, or you should get it strung five times a year. It's a lot of times. Well, one thing that you notice is if you ever got your racket restrung, it's amazing how mushy it feels just before you get it restrung, and when you get it restrung, a little bit more crisp, a little bit tighter, a lot more zip on the ball, a little better feel. That's why you even see the pros. They get their racket strung before every single match. And not just one, it's all of their rackets. It could be 8 to 12 rackets that get strung every single time. The one thing that we have at our shop, we have something called the Racket Diagnostic Center. What we do is we actually can measure the elasticity of the strings for you. We can tell you how mushy they are, how stiff they are. Our rule on that is if it's dropped by 20%, then that's when we recommend to get it restrung. Because what happens is after 20%, your strings start to move on you even more, and they get very mushy of a feel. They feel softer, but you're not getting as much power. What it's doing is it's literally stretching out and just going back into place. You're not getting the trampoline effect on the ball, which is how you get a little extra power. So with strings, tension is a very big aspect of it, obviously. The rule with that is the lower the tension, the more power that you get. The higher the tension, the more control-oriented feel and less power that you get there. The types of strings, there's 4 types of strings, basic strings. There's natural gut, there's nylon base, which is the most popular. What's increasingly popular is polyester. A lot of people are hearing about the Luxlon, the Big Banger. 60-something% of the men and women on the Pro Tour use it, and none of them are sponsored by it. They actually have to buy it from Luxlon. They absolutely love the string. And then the 4th one is Aramid, which is Kevlar, which is by far the most durable, worst feeling string, but Kevlar is what they put in bulletproof vests so you don't get shot. So that's what they put in the strings. So those are the 4 major ones, but probably the most popular that we all like is what we call a synthetic gut. It is a nylon-based string. The makeup is either a monofilament or a multifilament. Monofilament it does have a solid core, a little bit more durable. A multifilament is a lot softer, made out of, that's the name, a lot of filaments, either hundreds of filaments, sometimes thousands of filaments, depending on what type of quality is made out there. For me, whenever I pull string, I'm pulling this way, and it's constantly putting strain. And doing as many rackets as we do, you start to feel it. Same thing with tennis. Whenever you hit your backhand may be the issue. It could be your forehand because you're not following through. And every time you're coming this way, the momentum's coming out here. You're feeling it in your arm. So equipment is a big factor. Strokes are another big factor as well. There's a reason why we always tell you to follow through, because not only is it good for your game, it's good for your arm at the same time. So if you do have tennis elbow, the 2 biggest issues that we have is, like we said, with the overuse. It is some kind of twisting or stopping motion that is going to hurt your arm. I've told a few of you guys it's the torquing motion. Any type of twist, movement, that overuse is going to put strain into your arm. And it's not one shot. It's hitting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of balls, and finally it's starting to wear down. The other thing is excessive shot from you not hitting the center of the racket, or it could be, like we said, a lighter racket, a stiffer racket. That could also hurt you at the same time.